Earlier today, the FDA announced on its website that they are expediting the use of an experimental plasma injection treatment for seriously ill coronavirus patients. And as more cases emerge in New York, we know clinical trials are now underway as of today. We've been telling you about hydroxychloroquine and Zithromax, the combination, which has shown early promise in combating this virus and hopefully saving lives. Our good friend, Dr. Oz, spoke to COVID-19 patients on a show yesterday that are being treated with these drugs. And on a show today, here's what the patient said, but he also was speaking to doctors all around the country that are using this, off-label, compassionate care option while the trials are going on. This is what the patients had to say.
So they got in touch with an infectious disease doctor who, at that point, after hearing my story, agreed to issue the drug. About 30 minutes later, they gave it to me. That was 6:30 on Friday night. And by 4:45 in the morning, I woke up with no fever, no symptoms, and I felt great since.
And is she doing okay on the medication? Otherwise, do you think it affected her course?
I'm pretty convinced it's going to have a very substantial effect on her course. So she just finished 3 days in the hospital. She's actually being discharged home as we speak.
My condition improved by the next day. That my cough was improved, my shortness of breath was better, and my fever went away.
All right, joining us now is Dr. Oz. Dr. Oz, what I love about you is I watched your show for years, one of the top syndicated shows in all of television, and it's so obvious how much you love caring for people. This is your life's calling, what you do. And you're smart, you're not reckless. You've interviewed the patients, you're interviewing doctors, you're talking to everybody. We've known about this drug for, since 1945. Tell us why you're looking at this as a possible treatment that could save lives.
You know, I first learned about this study last week. It was relatively recent. Again, one is an anti-malarial drug and the other is Z-Pak, the antibiotic that so many of us use. And this French doctor, Dr. Relt, had a very famous infectious disease specialist, had done some interesting work at a pilot study showing that he could get rid of the virus in 6 days in 100% of the patients he treated, as opposed to maybe 20 days in most patients who have COVID-19. That's a big deal. That dramatically shortens the infectivity. But, you know, instead of looking for a needle in the haystack, I became more like the magnet pulling in the needles. Before I knew it, I had the opportunity to interview Dr. Relt. I was very impressed by him. And I told the vice president today that what he told me at the end of the interview stunned me. He said that he thought it was unethical to withhold this treatment based on what he knew. Again, this is not a fly-by-night fellow. He's very well respected. And in France, they're looking at his therapies. They're using him in some hospitals. But he told me about the Chinese who had done a study. So I got that study. And sure enough, they'd actually used the medication, this anti-malarial medication, in this case without the azithromycin. And they found that in 20 out of 20 patients, there was improvement in the clinical condition within 2 days. And they get x-rays of their chest and CT scans as well. In 19 out of 20 patients, there was an improvement in 5 days in their lung scans. And the 20th patient improved a few days later. So now I'm getting all these studies, Sean. Even today, I got a few extra from people saying, here's the little work I did. It worked. Now, it's all anecdotal. Dr. Fauci's absolutely right. We don't have the kind of randomized trial that me, Dr. Adams, the people who study for the FDA these trials would expect. That stated, I was thrilled when Vice President Pence today told me that he was pleased that the FDA was okay with off-label use. Basically, what I'm hearing, and I hope I'm getting it right, is that although we don't want people using off-label products, if physicians need to take care of their patients, the U.S. government respects that reality. And I was speaking to Governor Collier, the former governor from Kansas. He's a physician. He's back practicing medicine. He said, you go to war with the army you have. And he's on the show tomorrow, beautifully articulating why he is using that same combination of the malaria drug with the Z-Pak in his patients now in Kansas. He does not know yet if it's going to be effective, but he wants to give his patients the best chance possible. He doesn't have any other options. So until we get better results with other alternatives, he's going to give it a shot.
You know, I love when the president did right to try. If you're maybe at the end of life and somebody says, hey, you might want to try this, I know I would try it. I understand it's off-label. I understand a lot of this is anecdotal. We'd all like clinical trials. Okay, that's going to take years. We don't have years. And some people, I know it's somewhat anecdotal, but it's so positive. What are the risks? They seem minimal. We know a lot about this drug. Maybe people with heart conditions and at high doses, long periods of time, issues with sight, correct?
Exactly. If you don't know how these two drugs work together, which is the big mystery. But listen, you have to have a doctor involved in this. There's already been one tragedy of a gentleman. He took a version of a chemical that sounded similar. It's a sulfated version. Use it in fish tanks and aquariums to get rid of parasites. And he made the chemistry experiment in his body and he died. So we do not want people using this stuff willy-nilly. You must talk to your physician. But a lot of doctors here in New York and around the country are getting comfortable with the idea of using this earlier in the course of the treatment of their patients. There's another trial that was submitted at my university, Columbia University, to look at first responders, people who are the ones who most likely get infected, the spouse of someone who's been diagnosed with COVID-19, to try to prevent the disease, because theoretically there may be benefit there. But Sean, take a step back. If we have ideas of compounds, this being an example, but there are others being developed, that could either shorten the duration of the illness, make you less contagious, or prevent you from getting it, that changes the entire equation. That no matter what we end up doing in terms of this current crisis, we'll have less of it to fear in the future. That gives everyone more confidence going forward.
And now in record time, we broke down the sequence. Used to take years. What do we do it in 6 weeks? I love your show right now is much watched, very informational. How do you feel in the 20 seconds we have left? Convalescent plasma, people that have had the virus, recovered from the virus, you remove their plasma, they have the antibodies, and you can then IV it into people that are very sick. Promising?
Very promising. Again, if it saved the life of the person who beat the virus, who had it initially, take those same antibodies that if you made them yourself, take them and use them as someone who's desperately ill, clinging to life. You can sort of push them over into the end zone so they can beat the battle.
All right, great news. Keep up what you're doing, and must-watch television right now. Keep us up to speed on any latest developments that could save American lives. We appreciate what you're doing. Thank you. All right, up next, Joe Biden did several interviews today. One train wreck after another. Karl Rove is here. And later, why the Department of Homeland Security warning people to be on high alert for terrorists, possibly looking to exploit this pandemic. Oh, and I have a word for the mob and the media. Coming up.